There's a topic that has been going around recently on the internet that has really interested me about the Klan and the similarities between the Ku Klux Klan and some of the beliefs of the modern day prophets of the left wing, especially in Congress, such as Ayanna Pressley and all those who decide to push race grievance over any sensible and intelligible idea. And Vivek Ramaswamy, the presidential candidate, recently went on a bunch of media interviews where this topic came up. And I want to play one of those instances here to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Then I want to come back and kind of analyze all of it.
You took issue with comments from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She reportedly said, quote, "We don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice." About that, you said, "These are the words of the modern grand wizards of the modern KKK." You know, I'm sure, the KKK was responsible for more than a century's worth of horrific lynchings, rapes, murders of black people. How in any way are the views you're talking about comparable to the views and atrocities committed by the KKK?
What I said is the Grand Wizards of the KKK would be proud of what they would hear her say, because there's nothing more racist than saying that your skin color predicts something about the content of your viewpoints
You didn't just say they would be proud. You said these are the words of the modern Grand Wizards of the modern KKK.
It is the same spirit. You're right about that, Dana. I think it is the same spirit to say that I can look at you and based on just your skin color, that I know something about the content of your character, that I know something about the content of the viewpoints you're allowed to express. For Ayanna Pressley to tell me that because of my skin color, I can't express my views, that is wrong. It is divisive. It is driving hate in this country. This is dividing our country to a breaking point.
So as you see there, the news anchor starts out by saying that when Vivek said that Ayanna Pressley's sentiments were like the KKK, she immediately brings up the group's history, which, by the way, we'll explore most certainly, but that's kind of secondary to the claim. If you're making a claim about the ideas of a group, the group's history and the group's political activities are actually inconsequential to their ideas, in as much as the ideas stand for themselves. Even if the ideas may have influenced the activity, the ideas and the behavior are logically separate. The principle of distinctions is the basic principle that helps us understand meaning in this world. If you can't distinguish between one or two things, you can't understand one or two things. So, but this is the kind of stuff the media does to deliberately manipulate and trick people into this kind of framing that is contrary to sound thinking. Because the media does not care about sound thinking. The media cares about continuing to prompt up an intellectual environment of mediocrity that allows them to manufacture consent and continue to get the public's uninformed consent and the activities that the regime wishes to carry out. But then I also thought to myself, I'm quite disappointed with Vivek's answer, because Vivek simply says the spirit of Pressley and the KKK sentiments is exactly the same, and that shouldn't be so when it's racist. And I thought to myself, well, Christian, I think that Vivek is on to something here, kind of, sort of, it kind of misses the deeper point that should have been made by him in this interview, and it should be made by the many other commentators who try to make a similar point, likening the Ku Klux Klan with modern-day left race ideology, and that is this. Modern-day left race ideology and the Ku Klux Klan both spring from the same foundation, but they simply have different faces. And that foundation, simply put, is collectivism. In science, they have this thing called the genus. And there could be like a genus that has a bunch of different things that come out of it. And the genus is the foundation. It is just the broader category of several different other subcategories that come out of it. Similarly, a foundation can be a single foundation, but then have several other things come up from it. A foundation can be a supporting grounds for a house, or it can also be the supporting grounds for a business or a church. Different faces, but everything is a foundation in order to stand and in order to make sense. The foundation of the Ku Klux Klan, if we actually go back through history, isn't too distinct from the kind of stuff we have seen from modern-day race ideologues on the left who try to push their version of grievance and victimhood and push their version of race ideology onto people as a prescription for so many different policies. If you look, for example, about the original Klan, which was created in the 1860s in Pulaski, Tennessee by 6 Confederate veterans, the initial goal of the Klan, their stated goal, was to defend ex-Confederates and defend the rights of ex-Confederates who they believed had been besmirched and attacked by the system after the Civil War. Because after the Civil War, of course, there were a bunch of Confederates who were arrested during Reconstruction, all that kind of stuff. So in a way, the Klan's formation, they say, was a response to Reconstruction. But it was something a little bit more sinister than that. The Klan's formation was fundamentally a response to the freedom of people that, in their worldview, didn't deserve that freedom. And that is the freedom of black people, almost entirely. And it evolved from being this Confederates' rights organization to being a terrorist organization that attacked, lynched, robbed, and beat random black folk for no reason at all, just because they saw them within their worldview as fundamental threats to their goals. The key characteristic of a totalitarian ideology is how much it simplifies reality to fit its needs. The philosopher Hannah Arendt made a brilliant point in The Origins of Totalitarianism when she said that the Nazi worldview was a simplified view of reality where the Nazi understanding of the world was at the top and everything else was at the bottom. And there's something very important to understanding how the simplified worldview can play into totalitarianism and can play into bad consequences, because the simplified worldview does not take into account the various complexities that one must consider when dealing with issues in reality. For example, if you want to be a moral person or an ethical person, you have to consider more than just one thing. You can't just consider, for example, yourself. That's one factor. Yourself is important when it comes to sound moral and ethical thinking, but you have to also consider those around you. You have to consider as well if your actions or your conduct conforms to higher principles. You have to consider as well how sound are those higher principles. Am I acting according to principles that are demonstrable and provable in reality that actually lead to human flourishing? Or am I acting in accordance to principles that actually do not lead to anything but heartache and pain? You have to consider a bunch of things just to be a good person, just to be a functioning person in civilization. But the simplified worldview may say only one thing matters. And not only does that one thing matter, but that one thing excludes thought, it excludes consideration, and it promotes, by excluding thought and consideration, the justification for violence. The Ku Klux Klan had a totalitarian worldview that saw every single black person as a threat to their romantic idea of what America should be about, their Confederate idea of what America should be about. And for that reason, they became a terrorist organization. And for that reason, Congress in the 1870s had to pass several bills to literally defang the Klan. And for that reason, the Klan literally held entire local counties and sheriffs at gunpoint, saying that if you come against us, we will kill you. And in some cases, they did. For that reason, they became a force to reckon with. But let's look at the modern left. Because while we may say the modern left is not necessarily a giant terrorist operation, even though there are certainly elements of it that are, hello Antifa, we can't say that their foundations are any different. Just like the Ku Klux Klan elevated their Confederate romanticist idea of reality, this simplified view of reality, above any other considerations, and then used that, the relationship with political power, to justify the deaths and the execution of black folk to further that idea of reality, how have the left furthered their idea of reality, and what means have they used to do so? What is their idea of reality? Well, let's start with the progressive era. In the progressive era, the primary consideration was the worker. The worker was the locus of political attention. The worker was oppressed. The worker was so-called exploited by these greedy capitalists. We needed regulations. The robber barons, the myth of the robber barons was very prominent during the progressive era, where they basically said that there were these rich people that would buy up all the land and steal from people. And it just wasn't true. It's not true at all. It's a myth that comes from the foul depths of progressive historiography, which makes no sense when you actually look at the situation for what it is. But then you go ahead to a few years later, like a few decades later, and you get into the idea of woke leftism. which went from the political classes, as a political consideration, to now social groups as a political consideration. And then you see how intersectionality factions in. Intersectionality comes in the 70s and says, okay, as opposed to economic classes being your god now, what will be your interest now is different identities that the broader society dislikes, race being one of them, sexuality being one of them. And you will see how those identities fit in with this broader idea of oppression, this broader matrix of oppression. And then from that, you will deduce political policies, you will deduce meaning and value, you will deduce how you see the very essence of civilization from this simplified view of reality. Is this sounding familiar? And when you impose race at the front of this kind of methodology, if you could even call it that, which reduces everything to oppression and power dynamics, then you can easily see that the idea that black folks can't be racist comes from this. The idea that white folks are inherently racist, or white folks are inherently evil, or whiteness is inherently bad. Think about how many academic texts have been written on the idea of a whiteness. Think about how many seminars have happened. American Express did a seminar, for example, telling white people that they needed to listen to minorities and not speak when minorities were speaking. Coke had a Be Less White training. Think about how all of this stuff factors into this simplified view of reality where race is at the head of it and political prescriptions and power is beneath it. An ideology that collectively assesses black people, gay people, women, white people, I don't care what characteristic it is an ideology that is operating with a simplified view of reality. And then when you add race to it, it is an ideology that is operating with a racist, simplified view of reality. And then when you go beyond that, it is an ideology that through that racist, simplified view of reality is justifying atrocity and injustice, because the only thing they have to call back to is, you guessed it, that simplified view of reality. An ideology that says that white people are inherently evil is no better than an ideology that says that black folks are inherently evil. An ideology that says that we have to ensure that there is racial discrimination in order to ensure equity amongst certain people in society is no different than an ideology that says there has to be segregation in order to ensure coherence in society. An ideology that says that race, that being colorblind and not seeing race is tantamount to ignoring injustice and is therefore racist, is the same ideology that says that denying that race has some insurmountable value to the human being is a rejection of scientific reality. That's what the white supremacist racists of the 1920s, which most certainly had the same ideology as the Klan, were trying to say. The same ideology which says black girl magic or black empowerment is the same ideology that says white well-being and white power. Woke leftism and Klan race ideology are two sides of the same coin. I wish Vivek had described it like this. I wish he would have pinpointed it, but that's okay, because this is Christian Watson, and that's why I'm here. Because people need to understand there's always something deeper than your immediate tastes. Pointing at something and saying, that's racist, is not compelling, whether it's a woke leftist or someone on the right trying to besmirch the ideas of woke leftists. Pointing at something and saying, that's not the content of my character, that's the color of my skin, using that, and I'm getting tired of that adage, by the way. That's so old and tired and worn out. Stop saying that, people, please. Come up with something original. That's not going to be enough to actually get to the roots of what that sentiment is supposed to mean. We have to understand one thing. There's one inescapable fact that we have to understand if we want to truly heal American society and we want to truly rectify the logical errors that race collectivism and every other form of collectivism has inflicted upon American society, and it's this. We must understand the individual is the beginning of ethical, moral, and intellectual consideration. He's not the end-all be-all, but he is the beginning. The moment you admit the individual from ethics, from morality, from intellectualism, from any concept, is the moment your idea or your claim becomes divorced from the concrete ground of reality and becomes an abstract floating idea in the clouds, detached from all reasonable consideration. While I think thought experiments are fun, the condition of our society is not a thought experiment. It's very real. And philosophy and thinking must conform to the concrete realities of our time and not get caught up in the clouds with things that are divorced from what will actually help us get better as a people. So yes, the philosophy of Ayanna Pressley, which essentially adds value to race and essentially presupposes a bunch of different things about race, is the same philosophy of the Ku Klux Klan, which also adds value to race and presupposes a bunch of different things about race. And they come from the same genus of collectivism. Whether you are black, white, rich, poor, yellow, green, I don't care. If you want to be a rationally thinking human being, you should reject collectivism and everything it has to offer, because it has nothing to offer you but death, despair, and ignorance. My friends, like this video, comment on this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. If you want to help support my mission to bring sound, philosophically rich political commentary to the masses, please donate on my Patreon, PayPal, locals, buy me a coffee. All is in the comment section down below. Join my Discord, which is also in the comment section down below. I love you guys so much, and please, please stay pensive. Bye, everyone.